Take two.
Welcome to the While You Grow podcast with Dr. Courtney Addison and me, Addison Powell, where we will dive into all things pediatrics, occupational therapy, and other important topics around children and development. So, if you are a parent, occupational therapist, student, or just want to learn more about occupational therapy and pediatrics in general, then keep listening. For more information on the podcast and to follow us on social media, take a look in the show notes. Let's get started. All right, welcome to the While You Grow podcast. You'll notice it's a little different today. We are meeting with Kate over Zoom.
And this is Addison, and I'm Dr. Addison.
As always.
And Dr. Kate Watson here, just a little bio on her. Holds a Master's of Education in Psych Counseling from Columbia University. She has her doctorate in Health Policy and Social Justice from Drexel University and a Certificate of Diversity and Inclusion from Cornell University. She is the president and founder of the Advocacy Academy, which is a consulting company focused on the development of skilled victim and family advocates to reduce violence around the world. She has consulted plenty of people, including the Department of Defense, the NFL, and major television networks. She's part of different community opportunities, and you know, she's just doing great things. So Kate, thanks for coming on our podcast today.
For having me. And I can't thank you enough for not making me introduce myself. That's always the hardest part.
Oh, yes. Well, we've been listening to some podcasts, and I think I like that. You know, introducing yourself's hard. But is there anything, like, personally cool about you that you'd like to start with?
There's nothing personally cool about me, but yeah, I'll just say I'm not sure if that was in the bio, but I live in Philadelphia, and I get to travel a lot to do trainings for professionals, so I'm all around the country meeting folks who work in mental health, healthcare, social work, and just helping them develop their skills.
Absolutely. Have you ever worked with occupational therapists before?
Yes. In fact, I've done a lot of training with occupational therapists, mostly those who work in mental health as well, like that's sort of their area of occupational therapy. But yeah, I think it's always great fun to get a group of people who I'm training who actually come from many different fields. So I love when the room is filled with like OTs and nurses and social workers and case managers, and we can all kind of learn stuff together. I think that's a great environment.
Yes, OTs are very unique. We're your like kind of eccentric people in the group, creative. We're probably doing arts and crafts in the corner, knitting or something like that.
We've got a garden growing outside.
We do. Yeah. Actually, we have a hydroponics project growing up behind us as we speak. So that's the fun part. So I kind of, you know, for anybody listening, I want this podcast to be a direct resource for students, for OT practitioners out there, for educators on the tips and tricks of motivational interviewing. Can you kind of describe what motivational interviewing is?
Yeah. Motivational interviewing is just this way of speaking to people. It's a conversation style, and it's the kind of conversation style that you might implement or utilize when you're talking to someone about change or about growth or about making some kind of decision. So I always say to people, imagine those times when you're talking to someone who's maybe facing kind of like a fork in the road and like they don't know what to do. And we often don't know how to talk to people in those moments and what to say to them. Motivational interviewing is a way of talking people through those moments in life where they're feeling a bit torn or like they could go either direction.
Very good.
And we kind of run into that a little bit, like in the acute care setting, a lot of when they come into the hospital, you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the best setting that you should be going to before maybe you can go home to live independently. So I think that is very helpful for us to know.
And in terms of like pediatric patients, you know, when they when they come in, or you're first working with the parents, that's usually who you're working mostly motivational interviewing with. They've either just received a diagnosis if it's new, or they're kind of navigating a new diagnosis or working through some different challenges. So give us a little bit of background, I guess, on how to develop these skills and how to become a good motivational interviewer.
Yeah. It definitely takes practice and training. A lot of people will pick up a book about motivational interviewing, and that's a good start. But we always say it's kind of like learning to play the piano. You can't learn to play the piano by reading a book about playing the piano. You're going to have to put your fingers on the keys, or you're never going to learn to play the piano. So with motivational interviewing, you are going to have to try it out a lot and practice a lot. But a big part of what you're practicing is understanding those moments when someone's at that fork in the road, or what we call in motivational interviewing ambivalence. They're feeling two ways about something at the same time. A lot of what you're practicing is how to be with someone who's feeling torn, somebody who's going back and forth, and how to resist your own urge to just tell them what to do. Because decades of research has shown us over and over and over again that if we just tell people, well, you should do this, or you should do that, or follow these 3 steps, or take this advice, or read this pamphlet, it doesn't go well. They either push back, or they shut down, or they don't want to talk to you anymore. But it doesn't seem to be very helpful when we just tell people, here's the best way to go, or here's the step I think you should take. And so you'll be practicing how to resist that urge. And it's really an act of self-control, of self-restraint. And you might feel like you're biting your tongue a little bit. But if you're using motivational interviewing well, you are probably relaxing inside that urge that you feel to fix problems for people. And then once you have relaxed that urge, the hope is you can try to encourage them to talk about what they want to do, what's good for them, what their reasons are for doing that. And so we're trying to really draw out their motivations rather than telling them what to do. And that's why it's called motivational interviewing, because we're speaking to people in a way that draws something out of them. We assume people actually have motivation. Our job is to draw it out of them, not to give it to them. It doesn't seem to work when you try to offer people, here are strategies, here are resources, do it like this. That doesn't land so well.
Right, absolutely. And so in terms of rural communities, a lot of the population we serve I work in home health on the side, and I do some different things with students that come from rural communities. What are some strategies, or are there some global strategies that work with everyone? Would there be any strategies for specifically rural communities for that population, where the population and the parents that I work with are working full time constantly? And I guess maybe in the terms of like getting them engaged with OT, like how, working in home health, how do I get them engaged with like a home exercise program or following a protocol? When they're working full time, they are, usually 2-parent households, both parents are working, just kind of, doing the daily grind, but getting them engaged into this new program. They're already dealing with probably a little bit of grief of, maybe they got a new diagnosis for their child and they're trying to understand. But they're also accepting a new normal, but also want to do some different things. So talk to me potentially about, this is completely personal too, so I'm asking for personal advice on engaging that parent that has this specific kind of lifestyle going on.
Yeah. Well, I think there were a few questions in there. So one is like engaging the parent. And I think you started with this question of like, are there things that are unique about a rural community that maybe, I'm not sure if you used the phrase like, does motivational interviewing need to be adapted in some way? I felt like that's what you were asking.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to pull a question from my blogging or whatever.
Well, I should not pretend like I'm an expert on rural communities. I have never lived in one, have only visited. So I will not assume I know how to adapt this for rural communities. But what I would like to say is that over decades of research, motivational interviewing has been found to have its strongest effect size with any population that has been historically oppressed. And I would consider rural communities as communities where they have been disenfranchised, disempowered, feel unheard. When we've studied this in other groups, what we have found is that it's populations like those in prisons or those who come from ethnic minority backgrounds, or people who are often like considered some of the most stigmatized and discarded in the world, homeless populations, folks who are using substances, things like that. That's where we find motivational interviewing is its strongest and most powerful. It has what I call, the greatest effect size. So what that tells me is that this approach of not telling people what to do, but drawing out their own ideas seems to be most important or most useful when people expect something different. They are expecting to be told what to do. They are expecting to have no power in this conversation. They are expecting to be kept down by the more powerful professional who's barking orders at me. They are expecting what they've had their whole lives, which is something that is oppressive and disempowering. And then when they encounter this conversation that doesn't feel that way at all, it seems to be really helpful to them. So my gut is telling me that this would not require an adaptation, that motivational interviewing is just a really good fit. Those are my thoughts.
Wow. I mean, I don't know.
I can't say anything else besides wow to that.
That just gave me chills in the most geeked out, evidence-based way. If that's possible. It's so true though.
Yeah, and we're right after you, we have another one that we're doing with one of my classmates who her capstone project is actually in a juvenile detention center. And this, I'll immediately but hey, you need to
listen to this podcast.
You need to listen to this. Even though she's almost done, but
right.
That's amazing.
So far we've said motivational interviewing is great. You're amazing. This is good for our population. What are some immediate tips? I don't want you to give away the farm. You know what I mean? I don't want you, if they want more, I want them to seek you out. But what are some immediate tips or immediate strategies that we can start doing as an OT that will impact our profession? You've already said, yes, go out there and practice this. But what are some of those tips that you have? What does a motivational interviewing session look like?
I'm going to start with, there's really two things I'd like to tell you, but one of them's less satisfying, so I'll leave that one for next. But let me start with the one that's probably more satisfying. If somebody said, I need a tool that I can go use right now. I'm going to go pick up the phone and call someone in my life, and I want to use this immediately. I would say to them that I think what you're going to want to do is when you are asking questions, which I assume you will do, I am going to recommend that you ask questions that draw out more positive things than negative things. So here's an example. Rather than asking someone, how come you're not exercising at home? We gave you this exercise routine and you're not using it. How come you're not using it? No. We're not going to ask it that way. Right. We're going to say something like, I've noticed that you are not using the exercise routine that we gave you. What might make you try it in the future? Or what would make you want to give this another shot? Or what are one or two things you do like about it? Even though you haven't been using it, what are one or two things that you think could work, that maybe you do have some optimism about? The idea here is we're going to ask them what they can do, what they want to do, why they want to do it, and we're not really going to waste a lot of time on why you didn't, why you haven't, what's been so problematic. Motivational interviewing is about looking forward and not that much about looking back. every once in a while, you might want to know, like, well, what tripped you up in the past? Maybe I'd like to know that. And that's all right, a little bit here and there. But we don't spend a lot of time digging up, like, all your past failures and all your struggles. We accept that they are there, and let's look forward. What's next? What could be? What are you hoping for? I think that's a tool that would be satisfying for folks to begin using right away. My second answer is one that's less satisfying, but honestly, I think it's more important. I think really your first step is to just notice when you feel the urge to give advice and learn what that feels like. Because I can't tell you how many people try and tell me, I don't do that. Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Yes.
We all do it. Our brains are just wired to jump in with what we think is compassion. We spin it anyway to tell ourselves, I'm just a helpful person. And we tell ourselves how good we are, that we fix everybody's problems. So we are just wired to have that immediate response of wanting to fix problems. I really think the first assignment is to get to know that part of yourself. Notice it. I mean, I've even had some people give it a name. Like, most people name it after their mother, but whatever. You can name it. I won't touch that. You can name it whatever you want to name it, but like, understand that part of you that so badly wants to tell everyone what to do. Become familiar with that part of you, because it's going to show up a lot, and you're going to have to develop some skills for saying, like, shh, Nancy, settle down. Like, quiet right now. Don't do this. I think that's less satisfying. People want like an active thing to do. So the question thing might be more fun. But really, I think the more important thing is to become familiar with that reflexive response that we have to fix problems, because you're going to have to chill that out.
Right.
Yeah, and that's really hard for occupational therapists, because our job is part of just trying to help people, but sometimes you can help too much, because it's more of telling, not collaboration.
Right. How long do you feel that for yourself, how it takes to develop this skill? Because, I'm looking at Addison, and she's, a new grad. She's going out there. She's going to do a great thing, but this is something that she can continue to work on. And, it's something I still work on. I was thinking about a client I was working with yesterday, and just being so frustrated with, all right, I can't put it all out there for them. They're going to have to meet me somewhere, and, kind of the theme of our podcast is meet the client where they're at. And this kind of speaks to this as well. Like, but you've got to do the work on your side too. Like, all right, I can't give them everything. They've got to figure it out. They've got to find that motivation, that intrinsic value of, figuring it out. So yeah, this is really, really good points. Can you talk about some resources that students or practitioners can reach out to or practice with besides going in, maybe and working all the time with the clients, like if they don't have that option?
Oh yeah. So this is not my podcast that I'm going to plug. It is another podcast, but there's a podcast called Talking to Change that is all about motivational interviewing. Every episode is about motivational interviewing, and they bring on different people who are doing motivational interviewing and talk about applying it in different areas. I'll suspect there probably is an episode about OT. I was on it, but I was not talking about occupational therapy. I was talking about victim advocacy, which is more my area. So that podcast is one. There are tons of books out there. I think at this point there's like 30 to 40 books about motivational interviewing. I also think you can just practice with loved ones. Again, even if the only thing you're practicing is noticing that urge that you feel and maybe just naming it. Like, I'll do this with my friends when they call me and they have a problem and they notice me just getting like kind of quiet. I'll say, you know what I'm doing right now? And they go, I think so. And I'll say, I'm just really trying not to like jump in and tell you what to do. But, even if that's your practice, is noticing it and just naming it, that's a good step. So you could practice with friends, you could read some books, you could listen to the podcast, you could attend a training, and again, doesn't have to be one of mine. There are lots of trainings out there. If you want to know about trainings all around the world, you can go to motivationalinterviewing.org. There is a calendar of all kinds of trainings. I would check the time zone and the language because they're literally all around the world, so you don't want to find yourself signing up for one that's in Portuguese or, Mandarin Chinese or something. So make sure you read the details, but motivationalinterviewing.org will give you access to all kinds of resources.
Wow, thank you so much. And just to kind of wrap up this, kind of one final question too, and again, thank you so much for your time, but why is motivational interviewing so important for our world right now? I know your passions, and I know the change that you make within organizations, but why is it so important for our world right now, and it's specifically potentially healthcare?
So I believe that the secret ingredient in motivational interviewing is really an evening of power dynamics. And I believe all sorts of problems in our world right now at, individual levels, organizational levels, community levels, globally, are really about power grabs. And so I think that's true even when I'm arguing with my husband. Sometimes I think, are we both just trying to grab at power right now? Is that what's happening? Or like when I watch the news and I see major things happening globally, I think power grabs. People are just after power. And I believe that these conversations that we do in a motivational interviewing style are about actually taking the lower position. It's the opposite of a power grab. It's sort of lifting up the other person and saying, you're more powerful, you're more knowledgeable, you're the expert. I'm going to lift you higher than me and take the lower role. And I think if we could do a little bit more of that in this world, all sorts of levels of our society could see some really meaningful change. That's why I think motivational interviewing is important in our world right now.
Wow. That should be like a TikTok video. Like that's something right there. Would go viral. But it's so important with our parents. Like, they are the experts in their children. We are not as OTs. We are there as a resource, but they are with their children all the time, and they are going to be with their children for a while. So really, as OTs, keeping that in mind of parents, you guys are the experts. We're here to lift you up and support you, but let you guys take control of this situation. You make the decisions here. What do you want to see? And then hopefully that feeling and that sentiment translates to empowering that child, and so that they become independent, they become powerful. I can just see a lot of growth happening just from that little ripple change of that. What do you think, Addison?
Yeah, definitely. And I just think immediately too, we talk about motivational interviewing and all that, but our students, we've also talked about like how to practice active listening and how important that is. Can you speak on that a little bit in regards to how that relates to motivational interviewing?
Yeah. It's a big part of motivational interviewing. I mean, we've been doing this now for 25 minutes or so. Our trainings are usually like several days long, so there are lots of big important parts like active listening that I haven't even touched on. But this is the idea that, when people are speaking to us, they are most of the time offering a lot of really great things that very often we're missing. We're letting a lot of it just go by because we have this weird filter where we're always looking for problems to solve. So when you're always looking for a problem to solve, you're going to miss all of the stuff, what people are telling you what they want and what they can do and what they're capable of and what they believe and what their hopes and dreams are. A lot of that just goes right over our heads. So if you're listening better and you're really paying attention to everything the person is saying and maybe putting a little spotlight on some of that more positive and hopeful stuff and saying, I realize you're telling me that you're struggling with X, Y, and Z, but I also heard you say, how important it is. Tell me more about how important it is. So you're putting a spotlight on that more positive, sort of what we call change talk and motivational interviewing, putting a spotlight on that change talk and saying, let's dig into that a little bit more. I think that that's a way of listening, understanding, and then saying out loud what you've understood. And it's a far cry from just doing things like saying, oh yeah, I get it. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Uh-huh. I understand. No, really. I get it. I hear you. I'm with you. I feel you. I got you. This is all. I'll censor myself and not say what I really mean. It is some not great stuff when we say that. Because I think when we say those throwaway lines of like, I hear ya, I gotcha, I'm with ya, I feel ya, we are claiming to understand without any evidence that we're really understanding. And so active listening or reflective listening is a way of hearing something, understanding it, and then proving that you understand it by saying it out loud. It's offering evidence.
Yeah. Wow. So good. Yeah. Like, I mean, I feel like I'm just like, I've been practicing for a while too, and it's just a good reminder for all of us out there, even for those seasoned OTs that are listening in, that, you can get caught up in the hustle. And I heard myself saying, yeah, I got you, your baby did this week. I get it. Let's, God, it's just such a good reminder. Well, yeah. Kate, thanks so much for coming on. I feel like we could talk forever. Like maybe we need to do a part 2 eventually or something.
You let me know. Yeah, happy to do it.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. I've already learned so much. I love this. Yeah, this was so awesome. Because we talk about it in class and that kind of thing, but like, I don't know, like you said, it's even for students, it's a good reminder because this was semesters ago that we kind of talked about it, but
it should be something like every semester.
Yeah,
like Let's just get a reminder, like every day. Remind yourself to active listen, to be present, to promote, to lift our clients up. So we will do a meme of that one.
I hope so.
Well, thank you again. And you want to wrap us up, Addison?
Yes. Thank you to all our listeners. Again, Kate, thank you for coming on here and speaking with us for a little bit. So we'll close out this podcast. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the While You Grow podcast. If you learned something on this episode, please like, share, and comment. Join us next time as we dive into all things pediatrics, occupational therapy, and other important topics around children and development.